Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Syngenta Canada, Alberta Wheat Commission, and C&M Seeds.
Real Agriculture comes to you today from Ridgetown, Ontario, and we're going to talk a little bit of wheat for the Wheat School with Dr. David Hooker here. Dave, thanks for taking some time.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Awesome. Hey, we're actually going to talk a little bit of good news today, and we're going to talk Fusarium. Dave, we were talking a little earlier, discussing the fact that we're doing a lot better in managing Fusarium. It's not the devastating disease it was, and having the impacts that it has in the past. Is that a fair statement?
It is, because 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have the management tools available like we do today. We still have wheat that can be infected with Fusarium today if it's mismanaged and given the right weather conditions. But the risk of Fusarium infection and for downgrading wheat and for higher amounts of toxin in the wheat, those risks are much lower today if the disease is properly managed, if all the tools can be made available.
And that's the key, right? I mean, it's become manageable because of the tools you have. And you've got like a top 10 list of the things that growers can rely on these days. So let's talk about a few of those. Top of the list, new cultivars varieties.
Yeah, so amazing strides in the past 15, 16, 17 years. So 1996, that was when we had in Ontario a huge epidemic in wheat. And the industry and scientists, we all got together in 96, hey, we have to manage this disease much better. And so we do have a top 10 list now, at least a top 10 ways that we can manage Fusarium. And one of the main ones is genetics. Right. Above everything else, genetics is number one. So a strong genetic package that at least we don't have complete resistance now yet, but we do have a lot more varieties that are moderately resistant compared to those that are highly susceptible. Right. So back 15 years ago, most of our varieties were highly susceptible, and now very few are in that highly susceptible category.
Right. Now, the number two reason, and I guess the number two tool in the toolkit, or toolbox, fungicides. Big role these days.
Yeah, huge. So genetics is number one. Fungicides would be a very close number two. And so today we have fungicides like Caramba and Prosero. So those are the two main fungicides that are quite active, quite efficient at reducing Fusarium and DON in the wheat. So they don't control Fusarium completely, not 100% control, but it is a very important management strategy to use fungicides, especially when maybe the genetics is a little bit weak on the weak side, or when the weather is favorable for the disease development.
Right. Now, number three, what's interesting here is the strategy of using those two, fungicides and varieties, together.
Yes, and so it's very important to use as many tools as possible to reduce that vicious fungicide disease. Because we still call it, it's a good news scenario when we can manage the disease a little bit, but still that disease is very important, and we can mismanage that disease by growing a variety that maybe is a little bit susceptible, great yield, but maybe it's susceptible, or perhaps we misapply a fungicide.
Right. Now you got a great slide here that really shows that relationship.
Yes, I do. Here we have data from the 2013 Cereal Crop Committee performance trials. That year we had an incredible year in terms of a favorable condition for infection. So we thought it would be a good idea to compare the varieties in that year. So the first bar, we have highly susceptible varieties. So all the varieties that were susceptible were in that category. 4.7 ppm, the highly susceptible variety, no fungicide applied. Compare that with a more managed approach in terms of Fusarium infection, and that would be bar number 6 here. That red bar, that's the toxin response and moderately resistant varieties with a fungicide application. So we reduced the DON toxin levels from 4.7 in the relatively unmanaged cereal varieties to less than 0.7 ppm, which is about 1/6 or so of the toxin where we manage Fusarium.
Now, Dave, there's a couple of other strategies that have really helped out here. One is just application technology.
That's right. So when we talk about how important fungicide application is, we have to apply it, number one, at the right time, in terms of timing of development of infection of the disease, and also the application of uniformity of application on the weed heads. So those two things are very important in terms of how effective those fungicides would be on reducing Fusarium infection.
And there's also, we talk about forecasting, dawn forecasting as well.
Yeah, so Dawncast was a model that Dr. Art Shasma and myself, we developed that in 15 years ago, around 2000 or so. And that model can still be used today, is still used today, and we think it's just an excellent model. It's still valid in terms of the varieties that we have today, but that can really help to prioritize the sprayer in terms of the high demand that sprayer has, most sprayers have, and custom applicators and whatnot. And so if conditions are right for favorable infection, that Dawncast model should point to higher levels of toxin in the wheat, and that might just push, you know, the sprayer towards spraying the wheat instead of maybe spraying herbicide on soybeans or corn.
Right. So, but the bottom line here is, you know, we're doing well, but growers really still need to keep their foot on the gas pedal.
Yeah, exactly. So every year in Ontario, we still have pockets in Ontario in some fields that have higher levels of Fusarium that we would consider be acceptable. So we still need to do a lot of work, manage the disease. That disease is still around, stronger than ever before. It just needs the right weather condition and the pathogen available, and susceptibility of that variety and whatnot, or the lack of management thereof, could create an epidemic or a high situation of Fusarium in a particular field.
But the bottom line is we've got the tools, we've got the varieties, we've got the capabilities to manage this disease.
That's right. We can manage it much better now than what we did 15 years ago.
Awesome. Hey, always nice to come down Ridgetown College and hear a good news story. Pressure's on. Can't wait for our next story.
Yeah, great. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.